We're all products of our environment, and our biomedical systems have been focusing on the nature rather than the nurture components of our health and well-being. People like Yohan Hari, Russell Brand, and many others are telling their stories, showing that it's much more complicated than being labelled as, you're sick, you have a chemical imbalance in your brain, take these pills and move on. It's much more complicated than that.
As the great Tupac Shakur said, role is something people play, model is something that people make. Both of those things are fake. What I want to offer people is truth and authenticity in the treatment of this illness, in our regard to the criminal components of it, in assisting victims, and in the way we legislate and organise our society.
Every year that I've been alive, depression and anxiety have increased here in the United States, in Britain, and across the Western world, right? And I kept asking myself, why? Why is this happening? Why are so many more of us each year that passes finding it hard to get through the day, right? And I guess I wanted to understand that because of a more personal mystery. When I was a teenager, I remember going to my doctor and explaining that I had this feeling like pain was leaking out of me, that's how I put it at the time. And I felt very ashamed of it, I felt confused by it, I didn't understand why it was happening. And my doctor told me a story that I now realise from speaking to the leading scientists in the world on this was oversimplified, right? My doctor said, we know why people feel like this, it's just because of a problem in your brain. There's a chemical called serotonin that makes people feel good. Some people are naturally lacking it, you're clearly one of them. All we need to do is give you some drugs, you're going to feel better. So I started taking a chemical antidepressant called Paxil and I felt significantly better for a few months. And then this feeling of pain came back, so I went back. The doctor said, well, I didn't give you a high enough dose, I was given a high dose. Again, I felt better, again the feeling of pain came back. And I was really in this cycle of taking higher and higher doses until for 13 years I was taking the maximum dose you're allowed to take, at the end of which I was still really depressed. And I was surrounded by people who were becoming more and more depressed, so I just forced myself really to start looking into this. So I ended up going on this big journey for the book. I travelled over 40,000 miles. I wanted to meet the leading experts in the world about what causes depression and anxiety and what solves them, most importantly. So I met, not just leading experts, but just a crazy mixture of people with different perspectives, from an Amish village in Indiana, because the Amish have very low levels of depression, to a city in Brazil that banned advertising to see if that would make people feel better, to a lab in Baltimore where they were giving people psychedelics to see if that would help. And I learned a huge number of things, but the core of what I learned is that there's scientific evidence for 9 different causes of depression and anxiety. 2 of them are in fact biological. My doctor wasn't wrong. Your genes can make you more vulnerable to these problems, just like some people find it easier to put on weight than others. And there are real changes in your brain that begin when you become depressed that can make it harder to get out. But most of the factors that cause depression and anxiety are not in our biology. Most of the factors for which there's scientific evidence are factors in the way we're living.
I also believe that mental health stigma exists because mental health is so incredibly subjective, because it intertwines the psychological, physiological, environmental and perceptual factors into one big melting pot. A person who's experienced sadness and has gotten over it may have the idea that he or she had depression and overcame it, so others should too. We need to be hitting this topic really hard in our education systems. So if I could draw this out for you guys, I'd start by drawing the brain. The brain is our most physical and vital organ in our whole entire body. It's our executive control system. It's our biology, it's our nature, it's our intrinsic vehicle that we need to run this body. Then on top of that, I'm going to start drawing our perception here. Our perception is the way in which we perceive the world. It's our mentality. It's our psychology. It's the way in which we come to understand the world through our own lived experience. So that's our psychology. So on top of the brain and on top of the perception, we've got the environment, and the environment can infect all of these factors. So we have, our external circumstances, we've got our society and culture, and we've got the environment around us. But then we've also got the interaction between ourselves and the environment. So we've got ourselves, the environment, and we've got perception, which makes sense of everything around us.